All right, welcome to School Facilities and Operations Podcast. I am Burke Jones. I'm the host, and today, or we have two different kinds of episodes on this show. The first is we bring in a trade partner or a vendor and really pick their brain for, really for them to share what we need to know to really educate us. And then the other episode we bring on other directors of facilities for K-12 school districts or directors of operations, whatever the title is that has to do with facilities and operations. And we just have a conversation about some interesting topics. So we're gunning to be the number one K-12 facilities podcast, which I think the field is very small for that podcast, so it should be pretty easy. But if you guys have any feedback, just feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you got any guests you'd like to see on the show, just contact me there on LinkedIn, and we'll see if we can get them scheduled. So today we are joined by Salum Stutzer. He is the Director of Facilities and Purchasing at the Independence School District, which Independence, I believe, is a suburb on the east side of Kansas City. So it's part of the Kansas City Metro. So welcome, Salum.
Hey, thanks for having me, Burke. Looking forward to this. I've had the opportunity to watch a couple of your previous guests and podcasts, and the most recent one I think you did was with Matt Dedeke over in Leavenworth. A lot of interesting stuff, and I think it's always good. I'm glad you've kind of taken on this initiative. As facilities directors and operations directors, we don't share enough, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in sharing and what you do operationally, because it may be applicable to one of our colleagues.
Absolutely. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself, what your career path has looked like, and then share something that we can't read about you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, I professionally, I'll start there. I graduated from a small liberal arts called Central Methodist years ago, and had an opportunity to get into entry-level student affairs. And so I started out as a residence hall director, where I oversaw a building about 400 kiddos, students, and you learned a lot, about facility operations, and you work very closely with the plant operations team to make sure that the residence halls are conducive environments for students to live in. They're well maintained, and also there's some academic things that at the time we also implemented as part of those job responsibilities. So did that for a couple of years, and then I was promoted to a director of residence life. So I oversaw all of our residence halls on campus, which housed anywhere from it varied based on enrollment, but we'd have 900 in housing. Sometimes you'd get up to 1,200, and so oversaw that for many years, and then eventually climbed to serving as associate dean of students for Central Methodist, and I did that for about my total time there was about 9 years, and about 4 or 5 of my last 4 were as associate dean or assistant dean of students. So from there, I, had the 9-year itch, and we were ready. My wife and I were ready to do something different, and so had some opportunities back in the Kansas City metropolitan area, where I spent a good part of my life. My wife's from the other side of the state in St. Louis, so it was kind of conversation that we had to have and make a decision at the time based on opportunities in terms of what was best for our family. So we relocated back to the Independence area, and I started working for Shawnee Mission School District as an operations supervisor, so predominantly on the custodial operations side. And then I was there for about a couple of years, and then I had an opportunity to serve as the director of facilities for the Fort Osage School District. And then shortly, I was in that position for a year before I got poached by the Independent School District, where I currently am now, and I serve as the director of facilities. And purchasing and going into my 6th year.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, that's a good run.
good run. Not your typical trajectory, I guess, when you look at operations to go from kind of higher ed, academic driven to public schools, and really, and I say not a typical trajectory, but at the end of the day, in both settings, we're educating kids, right, and
Right.
facilities play a crucial role in their development, and at least in the instructional piece of that role.
So tell me something about you that we can't learn on LinkedIn.
Well, I don't know if I have it on there, but I played college football. I played at Central Methodist, and was a really great experience. Was fortunate enough so I played free safety, started out as a strong safety my freshman year. And then my sophomore, junior, and senior year, they moved me over to free safety, where I played all 3 years. Had a good run, had some tremendous defenses, was team captain 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior year there. And it was fun. It's an experience that I'll never forget. Was fortunate enough to also be an All-American in each one of those years. So not sure that's on my LinkedIn profile, but that's just a little tidbit for those that may be interested and curious. So
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was usually the guy on the sidelines taking pictures. I was more like newspaper yearbook. So,
well, one of the things that I always share, and I don't care whether it's athletics, I don't, band, choir. You learn a lot about yourself in those settings. I think those team settings, whether you're in a band, whether you're in choir, whether you're on a football program, you learn a lot, how to get along with other people, likes, dislikes, that organization or that community is expecting on you to contribute to it. And a lot of those little, I say little, but they're actually pretty big character building traits, really played a role in making me who I am today. And I owe quite a bit of that to that environment. So it was fun, right? The athletic side was fun, but that wasn't the single focus. Learned a lot more on the just the human being side of things, who you are.
yeah, oh, for sure. I even see in our football program here, it's just so much of the focus is on leadership
Mhm.
and being a good person
Yeah,
and contributing to the team.
yeah,
And winning is great. Like we won a
yeah.
lot, but
Right.
it's that whole other side of the development of these young people that is really what's important. So,
You
very,
develop the whole person. Yeah, you develop the
yeah.
whole person.
Well, listen, I wanted to have you on today because I've been following you on LinkedIn and you've posted some things about a big boiler and rooftop unit upgrade. I really wanted to dive into that
Yeah,
and understand how you put that whole project together. But
yeah,
also, I wanted to touch on this propane fueling station that you did.
yeah.
So I guess kind of start with how long have you guys been on propane for your district vehicles and why you kind of went that way, maybe?
Yeah. So, just to clarify on that, we haven't completely gone 100% propane. In fact, many of our what we call our white fleet is still just on regular unleaded, and we do have some diesel trucks in there. But the biggest driver on it is trying to control our transportation overhead costs and fueling. I think last time I looked, about every 2 weeks, we probably expense anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 in fuel. Uh,
Right.
so as we were looking to kind of control that cost a little bit more, we started exploring alternative fuels. And initially at the time, we started kind of looking into the compressed natural gas. And we were going to go down that road and until we kind of ran into, you do a lot of research when you're trying to implement something, of that nature into your district operations. And what we learned is, about every 10 years on the school buses themselves, you've got two, vessels that you need to replace based off of the, federal law, because the two tanks that hold your compressed natural gas on your buses need to be cycle replaced about every 8 to 10 years. So, that's at about $10,000 a tank.
Oh,
That's pretty significant costs in terms of just overall maintenance. We try to run our fleet about 15 years and then cycle it out. So once we kind of learned a little bit about that, and then just the overall cost of bringing the main service into our facility there, and the royalty fees that you will pay on every gallon of compressed natural gas that comes through, we started kind of exploring propane a little bit. And we really found that to be something that, would have worked very well for us. And so that's the direction we ended up going. So we worked with, we built the plant, put together a spec package, and built the plant. And, obviously there's metrics in there, are you gonna use a transport truck, or are you gonna refuel with a bobtail truck? We ended up going with almost, I think it was an 18,000 gallon propane tank, which gets us about 2 weeks of propane fuel for our fleet. And our goal, Burke, is to have about 75% of our fleet eventually all operate off of propane. But we run about 130 buses, and we run all over the state. And just to not put our diesel fuel is readily available, right? You can get that
right.
with any major interstate. And so the longer trips, we still want to carry some form of a fleet that still operates on diesel. But for our fleet that's running our three tier routes here locally, we'd really like to convert that part of the fleet to propane. We bid that the propane out about every 2 years, and I think diesel we're paying about, I think $2.15, might be a little bit higher here just because of the volume that we're buying. But propane, I think we're at 79 cents a gallon. So it's paid, the project's paid for itself. Our current fleet, we have about 30 propane buses. And obviously for capital cycle replacement, we don't want all of those coming due at the same time. So about every 2 to 3 years, we'll purchase another 10, or 15, kind of depending on what finances run like there. So
Right.
it's been a good project. The other thing is we save on all the DEF fluid for the diesel buses, and just the upkeep and maintenance of those. They're a lot, propane's a lot, don't have to plug them in during the winter time. They start, a cold start goes real well, and doesn't take as long for them to get up to temp. That way they can run their routes. So far, we've had the plant in for about 3.5 years now, and all of our mechanics and our transportation operations team love it.
Well, that's fascinating. So how big is your district? Like how many students are in that?
Yeah, so we're about 15,000 students, K through 12, and then we've got a pretty sizable pre-K program. So when you put all those numbers together, we're at about between 17,500 and 18,000 students. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so that's our student population. Square footage under roof, we're just a little over 4 million square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah, it
got
gives me some idea.
32 school sites, about another 7 to 8 support sites.
Okay. So you're about 3.5 times bigger than our district here in Derby. So
Yeah,
gives me some idea. Okay.
yeah.
So has there been a downside with propane that
Not
you've
that
seen?
we've found. Obviously, there's you just never know with market volatility and propane prices. Obviously, we're seeing increases in in natural gas. Not sure if that will translate over to propane. That's yet to be seen. But the last RFP that we put out for propane, we were still able to get really competitive pricing, and I think we got it locked in for 2 years, 79 cents a gallon in year one, and I think 89 cents a gallon in year two. So that's still really, really competitive when you start looking at what folks are paying for diesel and unleaded fuel.
Yeah, it is. I think the whole alternative fuel is really cooking up right now. I mean, I'm getting content. You probably are too. I mean, every day it seems like I get something about electric buses and
Yep.
um, some of the other things you could do with a bus that has a whole battery pack in it. Um, Someone mentioned to me that you could plug in like let's say 10 buses to a school during the peak electrical demand
Mhm.
and lower that peak by powering the school from the bus batteries.
Oh, wow.
Which so there's a lot of fascinating things. I have
There
no
are.
idea how realistic it is, but eventually
No,
I'll have
there's
someone on the show that can talk more about that because I know a guy that is involved pretty deeply in that. So
no, absolutely. And I think that's a good point. I think there's a lot of federal and state dollars right now from just reinvesting into infrastructure. And I think federal government is issuing significant resources specific to electric buses and other energy saving improvements, but electric buses were a big slice of that pie. So yeah, just similar to you, we've had folks reach out about electric buses, and we're going to listen, take a peek, but we're happy with the way propane is performing, and I think under those current grants or call for applications to have access to some of those dollars, I don't think propane is eligible. I think it's
mm,
specifically electric buses right now.
yeah. Well, it's going to be a whole new world in 5 or 10 years, I suspect.
That it is, and technology is ever changing, and it's we get to see it on the operations side with all the various things that get thrown our way about how to become either more efficient or more green, whatever
Right.
strategic initiatives are on the table from a organizational standpoint. So it's exciting, and it'll be interesting to see where the next 4 to 5 years go.
Exactly. Well, let's change gears a little bit because I've seen you post quite a bit about a big kind of boiler replacement project, rooftop replacement project, and you've thrown out some like how much you guys were able to save the district and the way you put that together. I thought this is really interesting and something that I'm still learning about the best way to procure services and equipment. So I thought this would be a great thing for us to really dive into. So maybe tell us a little bit about the project and then kind of how you went through that and some of those decisions you made and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably about a year ago this time, actually, to be honest with you, Burke, as we were looking at, obviously, many school districts had access to, ESSER $3 and how to utilize those for improvements to support, keeping schools open in terms of instruction. And so we had quite a bit of access to financial support on that. So as we were looking at best way to utilize those dollars, we tried to make sure we've always done a good job of making sure that we keep up with our cycle replacement. But with 4 million square feet under roof, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to take place on a daily basis, hourly basis to make sure that we're providing, tier one optimum instructional environments. And so we had already we do facility assessments, much like many of our colleagues, and we basically got things tiered in the threes. So we had life cycle replacement of units that were about 2 to 3 years past their life expectancy, their service. So that was, roughly about 115 rooftop units and another 16 to 17 boilers. So we were kind of living on on some borrowed time there. Obviously, with that, we look at the number of call out rates, work orders that have come in, and that kind of drive, when to strike. So in looking at how to best utilize those dollars, and obviously HVAC improvements were a part of the, eligible projects that you could do.
Right.
I did to tackle basically what I consider our tier one list there. So in order to really stretch those resources, decided that we would deliver that project non-conventionally, right? Because typically in a conventional method, you're working with your design team saying, this is what we want to do. You put the entire package out there. So your mechanical contractors are bidding not just the demo and install, but they're also bidding the equipment piece of it. Well, as with any project, there's always risk involved, and many mechanical contractors will, there's a markup charge for purchasing the equipment through them. So it might be 20%, might be 30%. You don't know, right?
Right.
That's kind of the game. I'd say game, but that's the business decision that everybody needs to make on the back end. So kind of knowing and understanding and having kind of the skill set to be able to deliver the project on a non-conventional way. I decided that I like a really specific type of system, brand as well. I've installed probably any project that we've done in the last 4 years mechanically. We've gone with, and I don't know, is it all right to mention the name of the?
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
All right. We've gone with Daikin systems. They've performed well. I think they're good value. They bring good value for the costs that we spend on it. So I worked directly with them to purchase the equipment, the cycle equipment. It was basically 1-for-1 equipment replacement. So then simultaneously, I was working with 2 design teams to put together, drawings, construction documents for the retrofitting of those units. So I purchased the equipment. I took a recommendation to the board last December. And I think we ended up purchasing about $3.9 million worth of boilers and, rooftop units as part of this project. And so the board approved that. We got that equipment ordered, and while we were working on the design portion of it. So we put that package out shortly after the board have approved things, and there were, for the most part, we knew what we were doing, and there was a few tweaks that we had to make on the documents and put that out. And we had 3 very qualified mechanical contractors bid on it. And we basically, the way we did our bid package is we had them bid on. We had a total of 22 schools basically as part of the retrofit in terms of the equipment. And so it gave us the opportunity to kind of combo bid and accept the lowest, most responsible. So just by doing that on bid day, right out of the gate, we were able to shave, I think, about $300,000 just on bid day alone by kind of doing a combo bid. That's not to mention the markup that we had already kind of cut out by procuring the equipment directly through the TIPS contract through Daikin. And that's a win-win for everybody. So all in all, so we procured the equipment, put the package out, and awarded the bids based off of the lowest, most responsible number in terms of the demo and install. There's also obviously some structural work that need to be done because as with typically the conventional thought is new equipment is lighter, but obviously with some of the systems that we went with, they're double wall, so they carry additional weight loads. And so
Right.
roof structure standpoint, we've got to make sure that, we maintain structural integrity. So there's some reinforcing that needed to take place as part of the bid package. And our design teams, our design engineering MEP teams did a good job of making sure that all of those pieces were covered. So far, it's all gone well. I think we've got all of our boilers, with the exception, we're finishing up some mechanical piping at one of our middle schools to finish off our 2 remaining boilers. They're installed. We're just finishing the mechanical piping. We've been running on the other boilers that were already in service there that were installed not too long ago. So all in all, it's going well. The biggest challenge is just, again, with procurement. Even though I ordered many of those rooftop units a year ago, this coming December, we've got several that are still kind of lagging. But I think here in the next month, we'll have our complete set. So I sequenced the project over 2 summers. Obviously, you've got the academic school year, and here in Independence, we run one of the largest summer school programs. So our windows of opportunities to really get in and do that work are really kind of defined to the summer, right?
Right.
As with really any school district. But so I didn't want to rip off any of the existing systems until we were in possession of the new systems, because with the procurement challenges that everybody's kind of enduring these days, not being able to condition the spaces, well, you just can't have that, if
Right.
we're honest, because no instruction can take place in there until those systems are online. So the plan is we got all of our boilers done this summer, and then there'll be a couple of rooftop units that we'll try to kind of pick off over some breaks. We've got about 2 weeks over Christmas break coming up here that we'll be able to do some work potentially if our mechanical contractors have the bandwidth, but a majority of the work will be sequenced this upcoming summer of 2023. So the one thing that I kind of left out is, obviously, from a department standpoint, we don't have cranes. We're not equipped to offload all of those. So in the bid specs, I had the mechanical contractors. I specified a specific hauling and rigging company here locally, Haggard Rigging and Hauling and Rigging. And so all of the equipment is being shipped directly to their yard, and they'll crane it, cart it, and then when we're ready to install it, they'll haul it over to the site. And that number was included in the mechanical contractors bids.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the equipment procurement. So TIPS is a purchasing cooperative,
Yep.
just so everybody's on the same page, where basically they've pre-negotiated the costs with the supplier, and it allows, at least, I guess, Kansas and apparently Missouri, we can purchase from there without having to bid it,
Correct.
right?
Already been competitively bid on the back end. Yeah.
Right.
Very
Right.
similar to, I think in Kansas, the big purchasing co-op is Greenbush. I
Right.
purchased playground equipment off of that contract. And so easiest way to explain that is that purchasing cooperative actually issues out RFPs for systems, whether it's playgrounds, whether it's HVAC equipment, and the various vendors respond to that, proposal, request for proposals, and they go through and they vet and they select the lowest and most responsible vendor, and that's how you kind of end up on their purchasing cooperative.
Right. Yeah, we've done some of that here also, which it is a way to get what you want
Mhm.
also at
Yep.
a competitive price. So then when you bid it to mechanical subs, um, did you end up selecting more than one of them? Or
Yes. Yeah. So we bid it, and we had 3 different mechanical contractors. Pre-bid meetings and all of that was mandatory, especially when you're trying to deliver a project of this nature where they're not purchasing the equipment, right? Uh,
right,
you want to make sure that everybody that's at the table understands the objective and what it's going to take to pull this project off. So And I mentioned that partly because we did have some mechanical contractors who did not attend the pre-bid meeting and then kind of came to the table late and were like, hey, we'd like to bid this. And as the owner, we said, no, pre-bid is obviously mandatory. And we specified that ahead of time and even let everybody know.
Right.
We had 3 mechanical contractors that, participated in the mandatory pre-bid process. And they also submitted, responses for the package we put out. And I'm grateful and thankful that we had 3 mechanical contractors, just because I think, with the exception of probably 1 or 2 other projects this summer from a HVAC project, this was one of the largest in the state. And just from a volume and economy of scale standpoint, you needed to have more than 1 mechanical contractor to spread the work out to ensure that the work could get done in a timely fashion.
So on their bid responses, did you have them break down into groups of schools or by school?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We
So
had,
then you can kind of mix it
but
and
then they
match.
also exactly, and that's what even drove down. So we had them do both. We had them break it out by school, but then we also had combo lump sum bids. So and ultimately we ended up picking and choosing because that was the best utilization of our patrons' tax dollars, even though they're ESSER dollars. To me, I always look at it as they're paid somewhere along the line. Our patrons paid for those programs, if you will. So trying to best utilize those dollars, that was the best way to do it, because we were able to save about $300K by doing it that way, as opposed to taking a lump sum number. And so what we were able to do is actually kind of go back to the table and pick up some additional equipment due to the savings that we saved just on bid day.
That's fantastic. So did you end up hiring all 3 or just a
Yeah,
couple of them?
I ended up hiring all 3. Yep.
I
And
mean, that's great because then you're also
all of
providing
them,
work out to the community.
yep, all of them were very happy with what they were awarded. You've got some that specialize just in boilers, so they were really kind of more strategically keen on the boiler work, and then you had some that were more strategically keen on the rooftop unit work. So
Did you have anybody complain that they weren't getting the markup from purchasing the equipment?
I did have, not to me directly, but not from the 3 mechanical contractors, but the initial, because we always cast a wide net before we put out a project. We'll talk to our various partners and kind of bounce some things off of them. Hey, if I was to put out this package, would you guys chase it?
Right.
What's your backlog look like? What's your current workload look like? And kind of going through that process. And the feedback initially when we were talking about this, because you've got quite a few mechanical contractors in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Don't know what that number is, but I would probably say it's well over, 15 to 20 quality mechanical contractors. And some of the initial responses I received is, the first question is, well, who's buying the equipment? I said, the district. And so, well, sorry, we're going to take a pass. And it's not because of, driving the revenue stream up. I think, again, what everybody always tries to assess is risk, right? When they're buying the equipment, they really control the entire process, right? There's a little bit less risk in doing it that way. But when you have the owner buying the equipment and then you're supposed to demo the existing equipment and install the new equipment, you carry a little bit more risk, right? In that process. And so they just, they didn't want to take on that additional risk. And so they didn't officially participate in the bid process. But I think after they really realized the, schedules opened up, as work was wrapping up and they wanted to kind of come back to the table. Unfortunately, they didn't participate in the pre-bid meetings and they weren't eligible to submit a bid. But no, to answer your question, I think nobody was disgruntled, but I think, as people assess their business model and how much risk there is in their response to to a proposal. They either make a decision to participate or not.
Right, right. Yeah, I've always wondered if I were, I mean, as you did, bought the equipment directly, do you end up paying more on the labor side? They still assume some risk, so I'm sure it's built into the labor a little bit, but probably not as much as a 20% upcharge on the unit.
Well, right, yeah, because you still want to be competitive on bid day, right? You know,
Right,
that the process kind of helps control that. Sure, you can have some markup, but you know, probably enough to cover your cost, and then a little bit above that. But you still don't want to be the highest on bid day, because more than likely you're not going to get awarded the work. So it's a good process, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't change anything about it. I think what I would probably do different in this process is maybe, if I had the luxury, obviously some of those dollars sunset, right? In 2023, you have to kind of have those expended. So we were kind of on a time crunch, but I would have probably done it over 3 summers, because even with the rooftop units in 2023, this coming summer, I mean, we've got 100 something rooftop units to demo and install, and really looking at about a 70-day schedule to get all that done on top of summer school, right?
right.
And then on top of your restorative summer clean, where you need those spaces conditioned as you're stripping and laying wax, that way the wax can cure
Right.
appropriately. So if I was going to do things different and I had the luxury to do it, I would have probably done it over three summers as opposed to 2. But much of that is driven by when those dollars sunset and have to be expensed.
Right. That makes sense. Well, so you said about 300,000 just on the labor. What do you think the total savings was on the whole project?
The total savings, by procuring it this way, I'm at about, I think, 1.8 million. That's pretty good number, and that's not including, the biggest savings, Burke, will be in the efficiency that we've gained just once all the systems are online. Obviously, our boiler work for the most part is done, and we've commissioned those. Startup's gone well; they're running. The biggest gain that we'll see there is the efficiencies in our utility spend on natural gas, right? Uh,
Yeah.
that's one area that I am concerned about just moving forward from a budget standpoint. We participate in, it's now I think called Wood River. It was what was it? Something Energy out of Houston. We're in a consortium basically for our
Right.
gas, and with the tariffs that were implemented last year, right now it looks like we're paying probably about 25 to 30% more than we ever have effective last year. So it'll be nice with some of the boiler upgrades to kind of recoup some of that efficiency on the natural gas side. So that's kind of where a big long-term savings is going to come. But the other piece is I was able to, under the commercial boiler rebate program through our Inspire Energy, we're going to get a really nice rebate check back to reinvest back into the district. It's going to be, north of that. The final number is still to be determined, but we'll be probably anywhere from 60 to 100K rebate check, which is nothing to sneeze at, right? It's
No, for sure.
yeah.
So when you did the new rooftop units, did you um, design them so that they could handle a higher level of filtration? I'm
We
kind of
did
going back
not.
to the
Yeah,
COVID days.
yeah. No, we didn't. We didn't add any. We didn't do any UV lighting or any of those things. We did really, for the most part, one-to-one replacement based off of the spaces that we're conditioning. I think sometimes, Burke, and this is just my position, I think too many times we we try to add bells and whistles without following the data. And at the end of the day, I think when you follow, mitigation practices, um, schools have been around for a long time, and each and every day, in our district, we have anywhere from 14 to 15,000 kiddos that enter our buildings, right? And indoor air quality is much more than just a piece of equipment, right? It's everything else that you're also doing in that environment. How much outside air are you, bringing in, right?
Right.
And we've always had those. We've had economizers on our units for a long time. It's not a new practice for us. So that system's worked well for us. We've also developed the types of chemicals that we use for indoor air quality, because that matters as well. And we've worked with our chemical providers to make sure that we're not introducing any chemicals that don't support, a quality indoor environment. Our furniture, we don't buy a lot of cloth furniture. We use a lot of plastics and or I'm drawing a blank right now, but
Vinyl.
vinyl. Yep. We use a lot of that because all those other materials hold various allergens that contribute to your indoor air quality positively or negatively. So we didn't, short answer, we didn't introduce any additional auxiliary pieces to our units. We looked at it. We looked at UV light, and at the end of the day, it's looking at the data. Does that really move the needle all that much? Whilst
Right.
adding really an additional preventative maintenance thing that you're going to have to continue to support through your PMs. And we couldn't answer yes to that, so we decided to just stick with one-for-one replacement, but keep many of the existing pieces that we had implemented, economizers for, ventilation, and then all of our controls and everything else to be able to monitor those and make sure those units are working at peak performance.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I know we're coming up against the end of our time.
Yeah.
I do this with everybody. It's a rapid fire question sequence I ask everybody. So, how would your parents describe what you do for a living?
um, I come from a family of educators. My dad was a teacher for many years, and so he understands kind of what facilities directors do. So there's no just, well, what does he do, right? Because he's been exposed to it, but
Right.
he's just way that I think if you were to ask him that, he'd say, he supports the physical environment to make sure that teachers, patrons, and all educational stakeholders can do what they need to do to instruct kids.
Yeah, that's the best answer yet.
Yeah.
Um, so are you a digital planner guy or a paper planner guy?
I think you have to be nimble on that, Burke. I'm both. I do find so I I put together a lot of reports for our leadership team on a weekly basis, and on that I'm digital, and I just use Google Docs. It's a continuing document, and I just reshare the updated piece of it. But when it comes to meetings, I I take I've got a book, right, and I purchase this one actually. You may know him, Charlie Branham, who's our Missouri School Plant Manager Executive Director. He worked with one of our partners to hand. This was kind of one of the welcome gifts, I guess, if you will, at our annual conference. And I really like it. It's a really nice book, and I've started utilizing it. But for the most part, most of the meetings that I run, they're I'm writing. I find that when you do that, you retain information much better. That's just
Hmm.
me. And you can always kind of go back and retype it up if you need to share it out to your teams. But for me, I'm a paper pen, sometimes paper pencil guy.
There you go. So, what part of the day do you get your best work done?
I've got three busy. My wife and I got three busy boys, and they're in every right now that they're predominantly hockey and baseball players. So we travel all over the country for and competitive hockey. So I always try to make sure that my family obligations are taken care of respective to that. But our work never stops, as you know. Even when we clock out at the end of the day, we have leadership or community asking certain questions, or there's always issues that come up. Districts operate for the most part, 24/7, really, in terms of our system. So there's always something going on. But so there's never enough time within the day to get my paperwork piece done. So what I typically do, I find that Sunday evenings from about 4 to 7, our kids don't have very many activities during that time. So I usually come up to my office and I'll work for typically about 2 to 3 hours. Lately, it's been a little bit shorter. Just you get so much done in that amount of time. So that's kind of my sweet spot. I try to do that, and then every now and then, depending on kind of because it ebbs and flows depending on what you have going on. I usually take my laptop with me to my son's practices and connect to my hotspot, and I'll fire off some emails, respond to some questions on construction projects. So that's kind of really where I get most of my paperwork done is
Right.
hockey practice for about an hour, and then Sunday evenings for everything else.
It's kind of your focus times. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for being on today. I learned a lot. It's really opened my brain to really think about some of the projects I've got coming up on how I can really make those dollars stretch out a little bit.
yeah.
Um, so if anybody wanted to get a hold of you or ask any more questions, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that's my district email, and it's my first name, Salum, and that's SALUM _ my last name, Stutzer, STUTZER, at isdschools.org. And if that's too lengthy for you, if you just go to isdschools.org, go to departments, and you'll be able to find facilities and operations right there. And my email address is there as well.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Really enjoyed our time together, and I'll let you get on with your day.
No, I appreciate Burke. I think it's, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's great to just, simply get a couple of facilities guys together and just really for sharing. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think we do enough of that. In fact, getting ready to go to an RTM conference here in San Diego later this week. I think many of our colleagues are going to be there. I'm actually presenting, not presenting, but I'm going to run one of the stakeholder roundtables. And at that table, we're going to talk about how to community engagement on projects and how to gather that feedback. So I'm excited about that, and just being able to share and exchange information on a national level. I think we need to do a better job at a local level of sharing and exchanging information, because at a local level, much of it is real relevance, right? We're dealing
Right.
with the same policy and planning, whether you're in Kansas or Missouri for the most part, or state governments, from a statute standpoint, have for the most part some of the same requirements and regulations. So anytime that we can get together, whether it's through podcast or our own independent regional meetings, I know Kansas has an association that meets maybe quarterly to just share. Podcast is another way of doing that, and really
Right.
appreciate you taking on that, because I think there'll be a lot of good things that come out of it.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All
Have
right,
a good
Bert, take care. Thank you.
Bye, Saloon.
Bye.